Hello, everyone. Welcome to Just Chat again, and I'm Uncle Dominic. Today, we have another exciting episode, and we're going to talk about embracing failures, celebrating success. And we all know that we all experience failures pretty much every day, right? And sometimes even more. But it should not stop us from going where we should go. So, in the end, the end journey is getting success. So today we have a special guest, John Wayne. We like invite him to the show, and we're going to talk about his success and also his failures. So let's welcome John Wayne. Welcome, John, to the show. Just chat.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Uncle Dominique. I appreciate your inviting me on your platform.
How's your day so far?
Pretty good. It's been raining for the last couple of days. Today is nice and shiny, which is an indicator how this interview is going to go. Nice and shiny.
Oh, that's great. It's really cold right now. It's about 11 degrees right now where I am. So that's why
Oh,
I'm wearing a
really?
sweater
Wow.
and stuff. So it's pretty cold. I'm not used to the
Yeah.
cold, but yeah, it's pretty cold. So this interview might be very chilly in a sense, but let's get to it. So introduce to us a little bit more about yourself so our audience can know who you are.
I'm a father, son, brother, filmmaker, doing my part in the universe. I'm originally from Chicago. I currently live in Houston, Texas. I've been producing media and music for almost 3 decades.
Wow. And was that difficult?
Difficult, it's I embrace it. It does have its challenges. I did initially start off wanting to be in entertainment. I wanted to be a doctor, so I didn't go to film school or those traditional routes. I went to school because in pre-med because I wanted to be a doctor. And that summer I had to kind of figure out what medical school I was going to go to. I got this telephone call from this production manager working on this indie film, said that I had left a message about working on the film. And I was like, no, I didn't. I didn't remember leaving a message on the answer machine, but she said I did. At the time, I was a manager at a parking garage. I had just lost my job. And
Mm.
so it seemed interesting. I said, okay, I'll go in and talk to her for the second sister director's position on an indie movie. I went in and talked to the guy. I had like a suit and tie on, all prepared like a regular job. And after 5 minutes, he realized I couldn't help him do nothing because I knew nothing about filmmaking. But she called me back like a week or so later and said that, hey, I can't give you that job, but I have a job in the art department as a production assistant, like the guy who goes and do stuff.
Mhm.
If you're interested in that, I would like to put you in that. And they were like shooting 16 days a week, 6 days a week, 16 hours a day for 6 weeks straight. And the
Wow.
pay was $50 a week. And I said, yes, I'll do it. Ironically enough, the movie I worked on was a film called Scenes for the Soul. It was director George Tillman's first film out of film school. George went on to do Soul Food, Men of All Notorious, and all these other bigger pictures. But this is his first film after he got out of film school. And I didn't know from anybody else. I was just, working because I thought it was interesting.
Mhm.
After we did that, I continued to work with him on other stuff. But I met this other guy who didn't go to film school either. He went to a community workshop for directing. And during that time, uh, if you wanted to get a music video done, you either went to New York or LA. There was nobody in middle America doing that. I mean, now it's pretty much every place you can get it, but that it just didn't work that way. That's not the way it went. And so we started doing music videos in Chicago. And this is during the time I come from film where you have to get real film and
Mhm.
develop
Mhm.
process and so this is time where people would spend a lot of money on music videos for songs that weren't even on the radio. So we started doing music videos in Chicago, and it would turn really successful. And I seemed to, get a lot of traction. At the time, I was just producing and production manager. I wasn't necessarily directing, just trying to understand the process. A little bit after that, we did some videos for this one producer named Steve Hurley. Steve Hurley he's a Grammy nominated producer now, but he's back in the day, he's most noted for doing house music tracks. So he was like the first person to have a song from the house charts in the UK to cross over to the mainstream. Nobody hadn't done that before. And so that was like pretty much his biggest claim to fame at that time. But he had a deal with RCA and a management company, and he was starting to put his company together. And he came to me and he's like, John, about being a publicist. And I was like, I don't know anything about being a publicist. And he said, I think you can do it. And I end up staying there and becoming the director of international A&R. I ran his office in Japan and the UK,
Wow.
his agents and offices, just being in the right place at the right time and understanding. That is really my foundation in entertainment. It comes from music and eventually into television and film.
I think it comes also from your personality, right? Because if you go to that interview with a positive attitude, I mean, they see it, they will hire you for it in the same place, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I would agree. I'm a very optimistic person. I'm a firm believer in whatever's for me is for me. Nobody can take and give that away. I believe sometimes when you don't get opportunities, it's not because you're not good at something. It's just it
mm,
might be something better that might, the universe wants to keep your options open for something better, or it might be something that might be detrimental to you. And sometimes we take failure as being the end of it all, and people sulk
mm.
and they just so understand they don't understand why that happened. But I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. It may not be for what you can see at the moment, but later on down the line, if you look back in your life of failures and success, it's like, wow, if I had this one thing that I wanted to do, and I would have kept me from doing this or being even open to doing something else.
It's difficult. I remember my parents, right? When my well, let's talk about my father for example. He started in the bank, right? He started working in the bank, but he was only an office boy, just in the office. Pretty much like you like what you did. You took a $50 pay for a week, and so he did a very low paying job as well, and he started from there, and then eventually. Many years down, he became a bank manager, and I was like, "Wow, a bank manager!" So now I look back, I was like, "Wow, my dad must be pretty resilient at that time to start from some nothing and became who he was." And so did my mom as well. My mom worked as an officer in the bank and eventually rise up all the way to a bank manager. I mean, it kind of feels like in those days, we always start to work from the bottom, and we try to
Mhm.
learn things from the bottom, and we try to build ourselves out. And it seems like nowadays, younger generation people who finish college, they tend to want to get into the job industry immediately, but at a high rank. For example,
Yeah.
they go in there. I want to be a manager immediately. I want to be a director immediately. I mean, sometimes that will immediately leads to failure almost instantly, right? Do you
Yeah.
agree on this?
Yeah, the thing about it is that especially being a leader, understanding what the people that you are asking to do things, you have to understand what you're asking them to do. And the
Mm,
only way to do that is that you have to kind of experience some things. It's not important that you learn every single person's job, but at least have enough to where you have empathy. Like in production, if I go and we're shooting something, if I ask the camera guy, I want to move the camera all the way on the other side to get another shot, have to understand the process that it's just not him moving the camera. He has to move the lights. There are a lot of things that have to take in consideration. And so I need to understand what I'm asking him to do. So when I do it, I know how long it's going to take and if I should maybe just do everything here first and before we go over there. A lot of times, if you don't understand the process of something, you get frustrated or why the person is not doing certain things. And I tell people all the time when they come to me, when I'm calling actors or other producers to collaborate, work on it, this if I'm coming to you with a project, this is what I'm doing. You have your own life and a whole bunch of other things you're doing that have nothing to do with me. So I have to be patient sometime and for people to either respond or people get the things that I need to get done because life just does not revolve around me and what I'm trying to
mm.
do. There's a whole nother person with a whole nother life agenda thing that's going on that I have none to do. So we have to learn in this society to give each other grace, give yourself grace, and give other people grace. Because if you don't do that, what happens is that, when you need someone to give you grace, they're less likely to extend it to you.
That's the thing as well, right? And because most of the time we expect people to bend to us, bend to our will,
Yes.
and for like we use our title for example. Oh, I'm a director. You need to listen to me, but at the same time, it's not. It's usually not that way, and
Yeah.
people are starting to realize it's not that way now. Right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The
yeah.
thing about it is the thing about it is I try to tell people when it comes to collaboration is that I'm not just doing movies and television just for
Mhm.
me. I'm doing it for other people. In order for me to do that, I need other people's cooperation to participate. My mother used to say to me when I was before I had got married and when I was single, my mother used to always say, "When you gonna have some kids?" I said, "Mom, as much as I want to do that, it requires cooperation from another person to do that. And if they don't cooperate, then I cannot have any kids and I cannot, I can't get married. They have to cooperate. So it's the same thing in life. Other people have to cooperate and they have to be want to cooperate as well.
Exactly right. That's true. Right. Um, Thinking back a little bit to my college years, I remember when I was in college, I was actually one of the student body presidency in the committee, right? So I was one of the vice presidents, and I had to. We did a show like an event, like a singing event, something like American Idol right now, something similar to it. Um, this is only in the school in the college, and so we had to well, my president decided they wanted to film this, and we do not have any budget for this because we're students, right? So there's no way to get cameras and stuff, so I have to figure out a way to do it. Eventually I found out that there's a TV studio, for the local TV, that will actually lend us all these things, and we just have to learn how to use it, and borrow them and use it. But after we shoot all the things that we need to shoot, we need to let them show it on their TV on their TV channel. And it was kind of difficult because no one wants to do it. And so I decided to, okay, if no one wants to do it, then I have to step up and
Yeah.
take my time and learn all this stuff, and do it myself. And so it just is one man thing. Just imagine me doing one man everything, like cameraman,
Yeah.
me, and everything. So it was difficult, but I it was kind of exciting in the same way, so I get to learn all this editing stuff which I've never did before, and how to use the camera. And eventually I got more people doing it, and eventually this became a big thing. Eventually I don't even have to do it anymore. And so, but still, it was kind of exciting for me to actually uh, take a step forward and try to find something that I don't know, I've never done before. I People expect me to fail, which is true. I did
Yeah.
fail, sort of, but in the end result, I think it started something bigger for the school. So I think this was great. Um, Same thing for you as well, right?
Yeah. You embracing a lot of times when it comes to life and learning, it is a journey. And sometimes people are not willing to either sacrifice or endure in the journey.
Mhm.
And just like where you were trying to learn all these things to do the show, in the process, you retained a lot of information that at the moment didn't seem relevant, but
Mhm.
later on in your life, or later on in other productions and other things you did, you had these moments. We live in society where kids don't have aha moments. We got Google. If you want to know if you want to know the difference between the sun and the moon, you go to Google, type in, he tells you. You don't have to retain it. Back in the day when you had to go to the library and read all the
Yeah,
books, you
man.
had to read all this stuff before you got to here's the answer. And at the moment, it seemed useless, but later on, and when you retain and recall somebody asks you a question and you answer, people ask me questions all the time, and I'll tell you, well, this is how I go. And they say, well, how do you know that? I said, I must have read it somewhere. I don't
Mhm.
remember, but it's in my mind. The information is stored inside of me. The Google in my mind has all this information, and it just needs things to retain it. So I think a lot of times, well, although technology does allow us to have access to lots of information, it kind of doesn't give us the ability to take that journey in learning and failure to figure out things, retain some of the information for later use.
Yeah, it just back in those days as well, it's just I have to go to different libraries just to get the book. You can't even find the book now, and so now it's so much easier with Google and everything. But still, it makes things a little bit easier, but still make people a little bit lazy sometimes. But we need to figure out anyway. So yeah, you mentioned failures, right? So this is the thing where people, like we mentioned earlier, or we talked about earlier, like I think people are generally afraid of failures. So because they're afraid of failures, they tend not to try something different. You were in the medical field, right? So, and then, well, doctor, yeah, you were gonna be a doctor, but then end up doing this different field. It's like a whole different realm, right? And
Yes.
so that is a risk. And did it pay off? Right now, yes, it paid off for you. But in those days, I bet there are people who are, in the John, you shouldn't be doing this. What are you doing this? Right? Things like that.
You know what? I saw this meme a couple of weeks ago on Instagram. and this guy was talking about failure and risk, and he's talking how people don't want to take risks, they're afraid they're going to fail. And he says, think about the risk of not doing and not trying. What does that mean on your life if you don't take this risk? And if you focus on that particular thing, it should propel you to move forward. Me personally, I don't like to live in an if I could have, would have, should have world. I'd rather
Mm,
try something and it didn't work versus wondering if this might work or if this situation will work. I have gone into producing things, and have my mind that this is what I'm going to do, not knowing if it's going to pan out or not, trying to take calculated risks, making choices that you think are educated based off of information that I have at that moment. But you don't know. You don't know. I mean, I'll come up with an idea. I'll go to a distributor and they say, okay, great. This sounds really good. Let's do this, and we'll write a script and we produce it. And as much as we think is the best thing since sliced cheese, people will be like, I don't like it. Or it's not
mm,
the moment for it and no one looks at it, or it's released in a weird period of time and people forget about it. There's tons of movies that I go on Netflix and Amazon that I didn't even know came out, that it just
mm.
kind of missed that, and so people take risk, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how people are going to receive. You don't know what's going to happen in the world, and so you take risks. But you can't. I don't look at failure as the same way. I look at failure as that when I do something that don't turn out the way I want to, I try to look at it from the aspect of what did I learn from that? What did I learn not to do? Or because if I soak in that moment of failure, I'm gonna be stuck. And a lot of times people get stuck. Filmmakers get stuck. I talk to filmmakers all the time who have projects and things that they produce that's sitting on their hard drives that they just, for one reason or another, they won't let it go. And so they get stuck right there because they think they need to fix this and do that. And honestly, the thing about it is that if you put it out into the world, let people be the judge of whatever it is and move forward. If you didn't do it, think it was the best thing you possibly did, use as a stepping stone to move forward to do other things. But if you can't get past that first step, you're going to be
Mm.
stuck there. You're going to be stuck, and you never, all your life, you're going to be like, I wonder what would have happened if I had done this, or taken a chance of just producing something. And a lot of people are just not willing to make those type of adjustments in life, taking those risks.
Yeah, especially when this risk involve huge amount of money, for example, like
Yeah.
producing movies definitely costs a lot of money than other risk in life, right? So I remember when I was, what was this, 25 years old. I had a friend of mine who says, Dominic, you need to go join me. We're going to go train to be a pilot. And this airline I was like, what, a pilot? I was like, yeah, come for an interview. I bet you get in, and then we can try to train ourselves to be a pilot in 3 years. I'm like, it's a huge change from what I wanted to do before, and it was a huge risk as well because that at that time I was married, I had a kid, and I was still in school, and so it was kind of like, should I do it? Should I not do it? Eventually, I didn't do it, so I didn't do it, and so till now, sometimes I wonder, what if I did it? I'll be just like him right now, flying airplanes everywhere. Um, with lots of money, for example. So that's
Mhm.
one way of thinking. It's kind of, it's still not so great to think about it sometimes. So I try not to think about what if I done this, what if I done this. So it's kind of like a regret, but still, it's not a bad stuff. But
But
yeah,
you think about that. Just using that example, although you didn't do that, you had some other responsibilities you thought was important. But let's just say you did go and you became a pilot. My ex-wife was a flight attendant, and so she would be going like out of 7 days a week, she'd be going like 3 or 4. And so a lot of times she missed a lot of things with my daughter. So think about all the things that you did experience with your child that if you were a pilot, you would not experience. There's moments, kids always seem to remember the bad stuff that happened. They don't ever remember the times every day that you washed his back or help him
yes,
with the homework. They don't remember that part. They remember when you told them they couldn't have this toy or, or something like that. But just think about all those things that impact them. That in your child's mind, they had in their mind of what is that you were there for something, a school play or help them with homework. Seems inconsequential to you, but it was very important to them. And if you have a conversation with them, they'll remember things like, oh, yeah, I remember when you did this for me or did that. And in your mind, thinking like, oh, that's not really nothing, but it was really big to them.
hmm.
So there's a reason why you didn't do that. And we can't sit around worrying about if it coulda, woulda, shoulda, coulda, because there's no reason way to know what happened. But
Exactly. Yeah.
if you feel at that moment you made decisions that were best based off of information you had and was best for your family and everything, then it was the right decision. Because you could have went the other way and there could have been a lot of bad things that could have happened. You could have had the prestige of flying and everybody's happy, and you go out visiting all these different places, and then your wife is sad because you're not there. Somebody, God forbid, got in an accident and you were flying in the air. Anything could have happened, but you are where you're supposed to be. Because if not, we wouldn't be having this, maybe not having this conversation right
Exactly. That's right. So yeah, you mentioned this incident about young people not remembering this. This just happened to me recently as well, and so because I teach in a high school, so I teach students
now.
of ages, teenage ages, and so this is this one time that they just remembered something that I said that which wasn't really that bad, but it became something of their point of hating me for it, and it's just changed the whole perspective of them, of me towards them. And I was like, that is just one sentence I said, and it wasn't really what they meant. They thought it meant, and so it was kind of like, oh my gosh, it's kind of it ruined the whole time, just changed the whole you know everything about me, the whole narration
Would
about
you,
me. So I was like,
the thing about that is that life is about moments.
mm,
It really is about moments when people make decisions to say, do, or move one way. And at that moment, you said something, you did something that you thought would, to explain whatever you're trying to concept to the kids. But they took that one moment and they blew it up into who you are as a person. I used to have this high school teacher. He was, I thought overall he was a good teacher. He was a
mm,
shop teacher, taught electricity. And I thought he was a good teacher, but he's very dogmatic in how he did stuff. Like when you walked up to the desk, you have to follow these particular lines on the floor, and you have to wait at a certain place. Yeah, only two people could be in a place where all the equipment is at a time. It was like all these rules and
wow.
stuff. But he was a good teacher, and he taught me a lot of things about electricity and things and stuff. Just in repairing stuff in my house. But when I think about him, when I talk to him about other people, those are the things that they remember about him. Like, oh, he was just mean. He was not the things that you actually took with you in your life. And sometimes we have, as humans, have the tendency to focus on the negative instead of the positive. There are way more positive things that happen in your life in a day versus negative, but we focus on that because our subconscious goes to, oh my God, this happened, and so we get overwhelmed in it. But
Mhm.
there are a lot of positive things. The first positive thing is that you got up this morning. A lot of people didn't get up this morning. You were able to put on your clothes by yourself. You're able to feed yourself. You can breathe. Those seem very simplistic, but a lot of people can't do those things. It's like the guy who's complaining about not getting these designer shoes when the guy who does it next to him doesn't even have any feet.
Mm.
You complaining because you can't get these shoes. He doesn't have any feet, which is which is more important, not having the feet or having the designer shoes. So it's all relative, each individual's perspective.
And for that person without the feet, he probably complained, well, I don't have a feet, I can't buy shoes. But still, I feel like everyone has complaints no matter what.
Yeah.
Just whether we have to accept the idea that the complaints doesn't get us anywhere. It's just only gonna make things worse. Um, Recently I had a car cut me off on the highway, and I was on my motorcycle at that time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so angry at it. Usually I don't get angry that fast, but that time I was pretty angry because he actually almost hit me. And so
Mm.
I honked the car, and it was an angry honk, right? So not a happy honk, but pretty much an angry honk. And the guy slowed down his car and wind down his window, and he looked at me, and I'm like, oh. So just imagine if I went on seriously and start yelling at him for whatever reason. This guy happens to be like looks like a gangster for one, and I'm like, oh, my life would end right there if I have gone even more. I should have controlled my anger sometimes, and
Mhm.
realize that sometimes certain things happen in life. You just have to, yeah, it happens. It happens. Just let it go and move
But
on.
that goes back to what I said before about giving yourself grace and giving
Mhm.
other people grace, because you really don't know what people are going through. If I have a meeting with someone, and that meeting is going to go one or two ways, regardless of how I feel about what I'm trying to pitch to them or talk to them about. If that morning when they left to go to the office, their wife gave them a kiss or a hug, or their husband, they were happy with them, then when I come, they'll probably open more to what I'm talking about. But if they left and they're in shambles with their mate and they have an argument and they have bad traffic and a whole bunch of other things, they'll listen to what I'm saying, but not really pay too much attention. And they might say no based on how they feel. We're all human. We're all held by our emotions and how we respond to stuff. And so you don't know what people are going through. Every single morning, I try to do this one thing. Facebook has this thing to where they tell you people's birthday, and I usually go on to
Right.
people and say, "Happy B Day, stay focused and determined." A lot of times, as much as it is to encourage the other person, it's also to encourage me because I need encouragement. But I'll get responses back to people like, "Oh, thank you so much," because I was going through something. I don't know this person from anyone else. If they're my friend and I or family, I might know. But if they're just a person that follows me on Facebook, I don't know them, but they
Mm,
send me a message back to say I really needed that because they're going through something. And a lot of times this goes back to my original thing about getting allowing people grace because you just don't know. Doesn't mean that you need to be a walking mat that people just kind of walk all over you, but you also need to take in consideration that you just don't know what's happening and just kind of instead of taking the point of view as that this person is doing something against me, think about that the person may be going through something. And that's the reason why they responded. And so maybe not to respond a certain way. But it's human nature. The guy cuts you off, whatever, you blow your horn because you're frustrated, and they're maybe trying to get their wife to the hospital because you're going to have a baby. So they're not trying to cut you off. They're just trying to do what they're trying to do. So people, please allow people grace because you never know what's happening.
that's right. Yeah. Sometimes my emotion takes control over me. Sometimes I knew that I usually don't honk at people when people cut me off. I just
You're just
bet
having a
they would.
moment. It's okay. It's a moment.
But that moment could be terrible, could have exploded into a whole different thing. Yeah. So we talked about a lot of things that giving people grace, right? So I envision an idea that probably has happened to you. You have your storyboard and everything, and you're gonna go pitch it to the what was it, the producers or the filmmakers, whatever, and they have to accept whether your idea was great, right? So I'm gonna assume most of the time when you do this, a lot of people or studios that go to the different studios, a lot of people will decline you and say, "No, I don't think this is good enough," and you go to a different one. Does this ever happen to you?
It happens a lot. For every success, it was probably 200. Every person who said yes to me is probably 200 people who said no.
Wow.
And so a lot of times you can't really get bogged down to that because they either don't see the vision or they don't. I realized a long time ago when it comes to networks, record labels, streaming platforms, distributors, whatever, although they traffic in creativity, they're corporate entities.
Hmm.
These people have benefits. They have 401k, PTO. They have all these things. So they're working a job, and their job is about numbers and reality. Me
Hmm.
being a creative is about how I feel and what I think. And I think people are like this and this. I think they're going to respond this way. They're not working in those worlds. They're working in the realities of numbers. And so if I come to them with an idea, a concept, it has to follow whatever agenda they're doing with as far as marketing, what their bigger brand is, mission. So there's a lot of things to take in consideration why somebody say no. If you pitch something, it's what usually happens in those particular places. They have these quarterly meetings or semi-annual meetings where they determine what shows they're going to pick up, what type of things they're going to pick up. And so they go out and send people out on the grocery list to get these type of things. If they send people out to say, I need for you to bring bread and milk back. This is what we're looking for this particular quarter. And somebody comes in and they pitches uh, 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 chicken,
Hmm.
and the chicken is probably the best chicken that you can ever taste or anything like that. And they'll say to him, "Wow, this chicken is great, but we're gonna pass on it." Now the person is confused. You just said the chicken is great. The problem is if I send somebody to the store for bread and milk and you come back with butter because it was on sale, thank you for the butter, but I need the bread and the milk. I
Hmm.
need you to go give me the bread and the milk. So it's the same thing. They're looking for some particular, just because they say no to you, is not that it's bad. It's just that's not what they're looking for at this particular time. And so I have to be very conscious about what people are trying to do, what they're willing to produce, to pay for, to license, what their grocery list of things are that they need this particular time. Because no matter how great I think this might be, this chicken that I'm pushing to people, If that's not what they need at the time, they're going to probably say no. So it's really just being cognitive of what people are doing at what particular place, so you won't have to get a lot of no's, for that. But it happens. People say no for a variety of different reasons that have nothing to do with me. They just said no. And one no does not mean that somebody else may not say yes. I'm a
Mm,
firm believer when people decline something, as long as they don't say no, they're looking for a reason to say yes. You just need to
mm.
find out what it is that will make them be okay to say yes. And a lot of
I
times
like
people
that.
don't push it hard enough to do that.
But the thing that you mentioned earlier, that people get bogged down, and this is true. Like after two or three rejections, they're like, "Oh no, my show is not good enough, or my idea is not great enough," and you have a different kind of mindset. How do you do that? How do you keep moving? I mean, you're probably telling yourself that the next one is gonna say yes, right? But you mentioned over 200 plus. So how is that gonna work? Does that very
So, one thing, I'll just say this off top when it comes to just ideas and concepts. Every idea or concept you come up with is not going to be golden. It's just
mm,
not. It's just there's just some things don't necessarily work, or it's not the time period for it to work. There are people you'll talk to, producers, that something they did wrote something 20 years ago that now is just coming to fruition. Now that it's just the right time for it to come to fruition. And a lot of times people don't have the patience to, or the endurance to say, okay, I'm just going to put this right here, and when I get the right person to who are open to me. Because a lot of times I go and pitch some particular thing, and then they ask me what else you got, and depending on what they're doing, I say, well, I got this thing here, and they be like, oh wow, that's interesting, because of a conversation they had, a board meeting, whatever case may be, and that might be interesting. So it a lot of times this is just learning process. If you write and develop a whole bunch of stuff, it may not be the right time for it, but if you keep it and somebody asks you about it, it is better for you to have that available versus now I have to rush and get it, put it together, now that somebody's interested in it. But it's just timing. A lot of things is just about timing. You just have to be in the right place at the right time. When somebody's looking for something, you got to be open to possibilities. I try to, when people call and connect with me, I try to talk as many as I possibly can, because you just never know. You never know. You just have to be open. You never know who people know, who they're connecting, or what they're looking for.
I think this is pretty tough for you in some ways, because you mentioned you're also a father and you're divorced. So you have how many kids do you have?
I have one biological child, but I have a stepdaughter who also lives with me. She's in her 30s, and then
Okay.
she has a couple of kids herself. So I'm a grandfather and a father all at one time.
Wow. Well, congratulations for being grandfather. But during that time, when you have your kids, and so all these things, negativity that says no, that's bugging you down, I how do you stay so strong? Like, I mean, you have this mindset. It's like most people will be like, after three, four, five. I mentioned like three, four, five times, they'll definitely not will not be thinking like my thing is gonna be good enough, like you said. And so, w- like, how do you do it?
It's a
Like,
choice. I'm
choice,
choosing
huh?
to be optimistic. I'm choosing to be optimistic. I can get bogged down and get disappointed and uh, depressed about certain things might turn in my way. But I'm choosing to be optimistic. I'm choosing to see the better side of that. I'm
Mm.
trying to live in reality about what my reality is about whatever given time. But I'm choosing to see the better part of whatever's happening. And that it goes back to my foundational, that everything happens for a reason. There are a lot of things that's happening to me right now in my professional life. They're really good stuff that happen all at kind of one time, which is good. But there are the buildup of things I've done in the past,
Mhm.
opportunities or people I connected with are now coming to fruition a lot more than they had been. So I have my good days and the bad days just like anybody else, but I choose to be optimistic. I choose to look at it in a positive way, because I can sit here and be like, oh, I wish that, why doesn't Steven Spielberg come and say he want to work with me? I mean, well, why is that? Why doesn't Oprah come and say, hey, I think your stuff is good? One thing I realized a couple of years ago as a filmmaker, I realized that nobody was coming to save me. Nobody was coming to save me. And if I wanted to get some stuff happening, I needed to make it happen myself. And a lot of times people are looking for this person who's going to come and sweep everything. They're going to make everything right. You're just going to give them their movie. They're going to edit and do all the marketing and do all this stuff for it.
Mhm.
And that person sometimes it's possible, but not probable. So the only way that you're really going to get to where you need to be proactive and move forward and make things happen for yourself. And a lot of times it takes you to step outside your box of who you are as a person. I know for me, I'm not a real big social person, so I don't really go out and do those things a lot. But sometimes I have to go out and do the network and things, and I sort of call people, send emails to people and say, hey, how you doing? I know we're connected. Maybe there's some synergy here. Can we have a meeting to talk to kind of see? And a lot of times, more times than not, when I talk to people, they're either looking for something that I can provide to them, or they know someone who is, or they're interested in having a conversation. But if I stay in my soaking in my little tiny
Mm.
world and not open and expand, then I'm going to keep getting, it's like somebody saying, I want you to make I'm determined that every day I'm going to eat a salad. But when I come to prepare my meal, I keep making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Well, that's good. Peanut butter jelly sandwich, put PB and J.
That is, but if I'm saying that I want to make a salad, but I never make a salad and I keep eating peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it's not going to happen
Mm.
unless I stop making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and make the salad. People ask for things, but they don't want to put in the effort or the sacrifice to do it. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of no's, not going and doing certain things and focus on the things you need. That if you want to change, people, what do they call insanity? Keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. You want to be successful. You want these things. Nobody lives in a box. Nobody just instantly get these opportunities. You have to go out there and let people know, because some people want to give you opportunity. They just don't know you exist or know you want that. You have to let people know. I
Mm.
want to do. I want to collaborate more with other filmmakers. I want to write more things. I want to get more things produced. I'm putting that out into the universe. So whoever's looking at this interview knows that, man, John is open to collaboration. Maybe I will reach out to him and maybe we could do some things. It's all about choices. Good, bad, and ugly. Whatever happens to you is about the choices that you make. Whatever's happened to me right now, good or bad, it's about something I did, not today, last week, last year, or some other time. So I have to be conscious about the things I put out into the universe. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not going to do everything perfect, but just be conscious of that. So when things come back to you, you understand why, good and bad. I understand why I did that. If I go a whole 2 weeks without washing clothes, in 2 weeks I'm not going to have any clothes to wear that's going to be
Mm.
clean. Those are my actions. Not because there's no conspiracy. Nobody's anywhere trying to make something happen. I didn't wash clothes, so I have no clean clothes. That's just the way it works. If I don't network and I don't connect with people, I don't write and I don't, you know, let people know this is what I'm doing, they're not going to come to me. They're not going to talk to me. So what you put out into the universe is what you get back.
That's right, and no one's gonna know you too as well, right? So
Yeah,
it's like if you want something different, you gotta try something different.
that's right.
So, how does your daughter feel about this? Like, what's her reaction when things don't go so well with to you or happens to you? Does she have a
So my
positive
daughter,
mindset as well?
that's funny because we've had I did this one interview and the guy asked me because my company is named after my daughter. Her name is London. And
Oh,
he
okay.
asked me, how did she feel about that? I said, honestly, I never asked her. But
Mhm.
my daughter, she refers to me as Captain America because she said, you always got something positive to say. Every time I say something, I said, no, you got to, and she be this all the time. And I tell her it's a choice. And so she, when she deals with stuff, she deals with stuff differently because she's an individual. She's different. And she's only 16.
Mhm.
So her process of how things work and everything is a lot different. But in most cases, she's pretty optimistic. And I try to rub some of that off who I am on her in hopes that she would be optimistic too. For the most part, she is pretty open and you know, she looks at things as possible, sometimes a little bit embracing too much because but in most part she's pretty positive. I usually don't have that particular problem, but she also tells me when she's going through something and I comes with this inspirational soapbox about what you should do. She's like, Captain America, please don't don't do that to me, Captain America.
So I have something similar as well. My because I have three kids, right? So my second son the other day had this conversation. He told me he had this conversation with um his classmates. And so he said his classmate asked him, like, what kind of family status do you have? What kind of status in society is your family? And my son says, "Oh, we're pretty much upper class family." And then when he said that, me and my wife was like, "What? We're upper class family? Hell no!" And he's like, "What? We have money and everything." I was like, "We don't have money or anything." I was like, "But how do we eat all this good food sometimes? What do you think? I work, I
That's
work for
right.
this." So my children don't really see the effort that I'm putting myself out there, struggling or
Mhm.
whatever, all the bad things that happen. They don't see it, and so to my
Mhm.
son, he feels like, "Oh, we're an upper class family." I'm like, we're not even
Yeah.
there at all. But to him or to them, they just see things that as I provide for them. And so that's why I was curious about your
My
daughter.
father, yeah, I do understand that. My father, he retired a couple of years ago. He worked on the assembly line at Ford Motor Company.
Mhm,
And my mother was a housewife. And as growing up as kids, we pretty much had whatever we needed, in our world, shoes,
mhm,
a lot of different things, So we saw those things. I remember as an adult, I was sitting down talking to my parents, and we just having this conversation about life, kids, and everything. And at that moment, I realized, like, wow, they're just regular people.
mhm,
They're just regular people trying to, survive and make things happen. And we were having conversations about things when I growing up, and they were like telling me some struggles and things they had went through that was none the wiser. Your kids don't really see those things, and I wonder sometimes how much they see struggle. You know, how much should they embrace that? Because a lot of times people get stuck at turbulent times in their life, and they don't know how to get past that. I think about my daughter when I went through the divorce. I was married for almost 10 years, and here she has a mother and father. We all live in the same house. Everything's going fine from her perspective. And one day we decide to get divorced. It's confusing to her because now, we're all in the same house. All of a sudden, she has a room here and over there, and half her stuff is kind of like, kind of moved around. And so she doesn't
mhm,
really understand what is going on in her life. And so she started to question who she was as a person. We had a whole conversation about is that this had nothing to do with you. But did she understand that? Because her world was around two people that she believed everything they said. And now that world is starting to separate and they're starting to say different things. And now she's confused. And she doesn't have enough information in mind as a young person to kind of, to separate the two things or make sense of it. One thing that kids have that every child should have, and unfortunately they don't have, there are two people in their life that they want to believe that the person will never do them wrong and always do them right, their mother and the father. If you can't believe your mother and father and you can't feel like they'll be there for you and fight for you, who can?
mhm,
The idea of walking around in the world and then you feel like one of your parents or both of your parents or you don't know who your parents are, who fights for you? That's a very intense thing for people, for young kids to kind of wrap their mind around, when they go to things like that, because now they don't understand. Every child comes in this world, especially have their mother and father, that these two people are going to be there for them. But here, child, if you don't have that, who advocates for you when you don't have that?
mhm. I mentioned something similar to my students as well, because right now I have a special class of students. They're much better off than a lot of other students in my school, and so they have this special class with me. And I mentioned to them all the things that they have done. Like, for example, their parents have worked really hard to give them what they have right now, and most of them,
Mhm.
they don't see it. So I told them one thing. Right now, on a successful rate, most of you are 2 or 3 steps ahead compared to a lot of people in this school. And so I told them, do not waste your 2 or 3 steps, because after they graduate from school, they're already 3 or 3 steps ahead. And so they can keep on going to become an even better person or have an even better life. But if they don't improve right now, if they don't understand that problem, everyone's going to catch up to them, and then they're going to be just normal, and they're going to have, you know not enough money to have their normal life, sense of normal food that they eat. And so, uh, like you mentioned, yeah, kids don't really understand that yet, and so it comes at a time when they will understand it. But hopefully, younger generation to us, they will understand all the things that we share it to them, and so they can learn this experience and not try not to go through the same thing again. Maybe can have a better thing again, better do better things. Just like uh, we our parents always tell us, don't put your hands on the fire, right? It will burn you.
Mhm.
We all know that, but how many of us will actually not put our hands there? Because I remember when my mom, my parents told me, don't put the hands on the fire, and what I did was I put my hands on the fire. I want to I want to feel it, and I was like,
Mhm.
I don't think you're right. Let's try it, and then oh, it doesn't really burn. And so, but there are other people out there who, well, our children should be the one to be try not to put the hands in the fire again, because we have told them and we have experienced it. Then it's better like they take different steps ahead and keep moving.
But I remember the moment when I realized that my parents were really smart is when I became an adult. As a child, they would tell me to do stuff. I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't. They have no clue. They don't know. And then is when you have children, and then you look at yourself, one repeating the same things your parents said, or your kids doing stuff, and you're like, I don't know why they're doing that. They don't understand. I spend a lot of time with my daughters doing stuff like, I know right now does not seem like you liking me or I'm telling you to do this. I promise you, 10 years from now, you'll be saying, oh man, Daddy, I'm so glad you had me do that.
Mm.
I remember when I had that aha moment with my parents, it was kind of like, oh my goodness, you guys were so smart. And I just did not listen to certain things. I didn't listen. And that is nothing, you can't, you have to experience that as a parent. When you have that moment where you realize what your parents were telling you was right, and you were not making the right decision, and you just thought you knew more than they did. That is the crazy thing about it. That you have moments in your life where you think they don't know what they're talking about. And no matter how many times I'll tell my daughter, I am 3, 4, 5 times your life at whatever she was age at the time. I said I didn't experience it. I'm telling you, it's not going to turn out the way you want it to turn out. And she'll look at me like, he don't know what he's talking about.
I know, right? Or my kids were like, you don't know anything about technology now. I'm like, oh, I do know. I just pretend not to know sometimes. But they say like, oh, and so even today during dinner, my daughter said, Dad, you mentioned that you know everything, right? You know everything. I was like, yeah. So I'm gonna ask you a question. I was like, okay. I was like, oh shoot. I was like, what kind of question is she gonna ask me? And she asked me a question. Luckily, I know the answers to that question. So I'm like, oh yeah. So I told her, and they're like, "What really?" Well, so that does really know the answer to everything. So I'm like, "Yes," But
Those moments of trying to maintain the all and powerful dad is,
it's difficult. It's difficult
yeah,
because to them, I know everything. But so
yeah.
if they give me a test like that, sometimes I might fail. But luckily this time it was like, yes, nothing happened. I was like, yes, all good, all good. Yeah. Um, you also mentioned with all these things that you do, and you said on lighter note that you are a great cook. So tell us about that. Because for me, when I cook, it starts from terrible, and eventually my cooking gets better and better, right? So this is also similar to failures and then eventually success. And so you are a great cook. Tell us a little bit about that, if you could.
Well, cooking is a process, and I think people don't really understand that. I didn't become a good cook just started the first day. I burnt lots of pots of food, lots of burnt cakes and pies, and I burnt a lot of food. And I understood what not to do. I understood what if I put too much sugar in something, what happens. I put too much butter or oil in something, what happens. If I don't put enough flour in something, what happens. It's all a process. It's about those stepping stones. And sometimes people, when they don't know how to cook, they start and they burn a couple of times, like, I did just give up. You just either, some people are very good at, if you follow the recipe, it'll be okay. Other people can kind of eye stuff. I'm kind of in the middle. If I look at the recipe a little bit, then I kind of figure out, okay, what you need to do. I don't do
Mm.
a whole bunch of measuring, so I just learn. But that's a process. It's like anything else. It's just like my career is a process. I didn't just know this stuff. I made mistakes. Remember, don't do this. You write contracts with people, and you're like, ooh, they did something I didn't see coming, and I go and put something else in there. The next time you learn, it's a building process. So I'm a pretty good everyday cook. I'm also pretty good, holiday cook. I cook for, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and whatever case may be. I don't necessarily require women to actually cook for me per se, because I can cook and do those things myself. But you need to know how to do those things, because I don't want to have to be doing it all the time. I don't want to be in a situation. I was with this dating this one girl years ago, and I went out of town for a couple of days, and so when I came back, I was like, we're just talking. It's like, what you eating? And she's like, I just ate out every day. And she said, why? Because you wasn't here to cook. Okay, wait a second. You need to, you need to cook yourself. Look, I cannot be everything to everybody. You need to be able to cook yourself. So cooking is a process. It's very relaxing for me. It's method, the method of just the process of doing stuff. It makes me focus on that one thing. I'm focusing on multiple things throughout the day, multiple projects, multiple people, trying to balance all these other things out. So when I cook, I'm focusing on one thing and I'm making sure this task gets done, and I'm focused on. So it helps me. It's a relaxing thing for me, because I don't have to think outside of add this, stir this, put this in there. And so it helps with stress a lot of times, And then I also like the fact of feed my family. I like for them to say, "Oh my God, it was really good," and I want more, or fighting on the last piece of something. That brings joy to me, being able to give back to them, to
Yeah,
be able
definitely.
to,
Yeah.
have them enjoy what I do. Even to this day, sometimes I don't cook stuff that they necessarily like, and I try to take notes from them and say, okay, well, what is it that you didn't like about that? Well, I didn't like it was maybe too salty, or not, you know, they didn't it wasn't soft enough, or whatever the case may be. Like my daughter used to always say years ago, she's like I made her skate steak one time, and
Mhm.
so in her mind, daddy steaks are dry. Daddy steaks are dry. And then my grandson's like, oh, I think they're really good. And so it took me a long time to convince her, okay, I've learned from that, London. I'm going to do better. And so now she's like, okay, they taste all right now. They good now.
I, I do cook for my family sometimes, and but every time they eat, they'll say, "Oh, this is good, this is good." So, but in my mind, it's like no, they're just saying it nicely, and I'm like for
They do
example,
have a tendency of doing stuff like that. But you know how you grade that? If they eat it all, then they actually did like
uh, maybe it's just because they're hungry. Because like for example, like my oldest son today, he didn't get up till like 12 o'clock. So
it.
when I was like, "What? You haven't eaten yet?" So okay, so I'm gonna cook something. So I took out dumplings, and then I was thinking, what should I put on with the dumplings? And then so I opened the fridge. It's like, oh, there's no eggs. I was like, I was gonna fry them. I was like, what should I do? I was like, oh, I'm gonna figure something out. So I look around. I said, "Oh, honey, I'm gonna use honey." Oh, I look at this. Oh, okay, use this, use this. So I said, add bunch of stuff together and just cooked it. And I tested it. I was like, "Well, this is good." Okay, so I gave it to him, and he's
Surprise
like,
yourself.
"Well, I liked it. I don't think he liked it." So
Oh.
yeah, he's like, "Oh, it's okay." So I'm like, "Okay, doesn't matter. I liked it." So the whole point is I liked it. But yeah,
At the
so
end of the day, that's all you got. If you like it, you can't satisfy everybody.
yeah, like I mentioned to my friends a couple of times, bacon and honey. For all of you out there, bacon and honey actually tastes really good. If you don't know,
Yeah.
bacon, honey, and rice, white rice. Oh,
Mhm.
so good. My mom used to make it for me, so this is used to be awesome. Thank you so much, John, for coming to the show. We have talked a lot of great things. There's a lot of things that I've understand. I'm sure people have understand as well. I want to say on a good note to my parents, also to my mom especially. If you're watching this show right now, thank you for your sacrifices that you have done. And as the parents now, I understand why you do this and why you do that, and so it's much better on me now. I thank you again, and then thank you, John, for sharing everything you have about your personal life and your journey. Now, are you able to give us maybe three, let's say, two sentences to our viewers out there for the younger generations and how they can get by in their life if we to sum up everything we say today?
The one thing I say to everybody, which is kind of like my trademark thing, is stay focused and determined. We all can stay focused, need focus and determination. In spite of what the odds or things that's going on with your life, you really have to stay focused and set realistic goals and make those determined for you to complete.
Thank you. Thank you. The one thing that I really get from you today was we have a choice in making our decision, a choice to be positive, and let everyone has. We need to give everyone their grace. So that's what I totally got from this chat today, and which is very helpful for me as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. For everyone out there, please check out John Wayne's website, London Town, I believe it's called in London Town. And there's a few shows in there. I think his famous one is Ebony Hustle. Is that right? Ebony Hustle?
Yes, we did it a couple of years ago. We have a new one that's coming out in this streaming this March called Ebony Hustle Ballistic Protection. So it's a second installment of Ebony Hustle, and she comes back more fierce than she was the first time.
So please check it out. I'm excited to take a look at it as well. I think it's coming out in March, you say? March, right?
Yes, it's coming to streaming platforms in March.
All right, awesome. Let's all stick forward to that. Well, thank you again for the show, John. Thank you for coming, and everyone, thank you for coming to the show today. And this is the end of this week's episode. So stay tuned next week for more exciting things to talk about. And if you like, please like and subscribe. Thank you, and everyone have a good night.